Hey internet, what's going on? Aaron here, and today it's how to make kombucha. There's a lot of misinformation out there online, so it's important you get your stuff from a reputable source, which is why most of my ideas are backed by this fantastic book called The Big Book of Kombucha. It has amazing reviews. And of course, it will cover much more than what I'm going over in this video. But if you're serious about it and you want to get into more advanced techniques, check out that book, link below. And otherwise, well, this is going to be a video for novice to intermediate kombucha brewers. I'm going to cover many different things, so check out some of the jump points. And with no further ado, let's jump in. Basically, kombucha is made from yeast, which consumes sugar to produce CO2 and ethanol, and bacteria, which consume that ethanol to produce many different acids. Sugars and caffeine are also consumed to produce the SCOBY, a protective layer which grows on the surface of the liquid and houses the colonies. Everything starts with getting a SCOBY. This is a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast, and usually comes with some starter fluid. It's important to get your SCOBY from a reputable source, such as kombuchacamp.com, or from somebody who knows what they are doing. This is because there are things which can harm the bacteria colony, such as brewing with additional ingredients in the jar, or putting it all in the fridge to make it go to sleep. Bacteria strains can completely die off from this, and you want a diverse culture to begin with. To brew, boil 1 gallon of water, infuse it with 4 to 8 portions of tea. Then add 1 cup of sugar, mix to dissolve it, and let it all cool down. After that, add the sugar tea liquid to a receptacle. Put the SCOBY on top. And pour the starter liquid on top of it to kickstart the process and keep it sterile. Store this jar away and wait. This will brew 1 gallon of kombucha. The type of tea you use should be green tea, but you can also use black, white, pu'er, and oolong. All of these are derived from Camellia sinensis. The differences are mostly in the growth stage and will have different health benefits. It is important that the tea contains caffeine because the fermentation process depends on it and will consume most of it. Don't use fancy sugars, just plain white sugar is best. If you're really picky, then evaporated cane juice is just as good. Ideally, you want water which is filtered so that there's no chlorine, because chlorine will inhibit the growth of your bacteria, killing many of them. The best way to brew kombucha is with a continuous brew, which will save a lot of time and hassle. For novices, however, do it the way I'm using 1 gallon vessels. You need a container which can have a cloth cover added to the top so that fruit flies cannot get inside. Don't waste your time with a cheesecloth because the weave is too loose and a piece of fabric will work better. Although a second fermentation isn't necessary, it's where all the fun is. You're going to want bottles with swing cap tops or some similar mechanism, because in the event a lot of pressure builds up, it's better that the cap blasts off instead of the bottle exploding. It's better to use tinted glass to protect the bacteria from UV. Kombucha will brew best in warmer temperatures, but the acceptable range is 21 to 29 degrees Celsius. Warmer than that will favor the yeast and disable the bacteria, and colder will result in a very slow or even no brew at all. If you live in a cold environment, you can buy a heating pad which will heat the sides of the container and favor bacteria growth. Heating the bottom will result in poor taste as the yeast collect at the bottom. You always want to favor the bacteria because although the yeast and bacteria are symbiotic, they are also competing and the yeast will always win. Taste your kombucha frequently so that you know when to bottle it. I like to bottle a brew that still has a little bit of sugar left and tastes a little bit sweet so that the carbonation is better. Prep your vessel by washing it and then rinsing with chlorine-free water. Add the hot sugar tea and then dilute it with cold water so that your temperature is safe for the SCOBY. Add in the SCOBY and pour the extra liquid on top. It's important to pour the liquid on top because it will protect the SCOBY by acidifying the liquid on the top of the vessel. After covering with a breathable cloth and leaving it to sit in a warm, dark place for 7 days, you should see a new SCOBY forming at the top of the liquid. At this point, it's a good idea to begin tasting the brew by carefully not disturbing the SCOBY and testing if it is acidic yet. When it is almost no longer sweet at all, you're ready to bottle. A healthy brew will have bubbles underneath the SCOBY indicating carbon dioxide generation by the yeast, SCOBY growth, and a vinegary aroma. The color will lighten as the culture breaks down the tannins in the tea as well. It can take up to 3 weeks to complete your brew, so be sure to be patient and taste it as you go along. After the kombucha tastes good and the brew is ready, it has a remarkable ability to take on new flavors with a second fermentation. This will allow you to store and carbonate the beverage. Although you can make kombucha with garlic, jalapeno, mushrooms, tomato, onion, oregano, lime, rosemary, cucumber, peppermint, mint, beet, cilantro, thyme, celery, black pepper, carrot, cayenne, vanilla bean, basil, lavender, ginger, cloves, hibiscus, cardamom, allspice, fennel, licorice, turmeric, and many other ingredients, I prefer to stick with fruits. My personal favorite is raspberry, but I've had excellent experiences with cherry, blueberry, blackberry, elderberry, and syrups as well. Basically, just chop it up and put it in the bottle. You don't need a lot. After, pour the kombucha into the bottle and be prepared to start your next brew. I'll go over a complete cycle now. It's worth learning how to be time efficient with this process because you're going to do it often. The only prep work you need to do is have filtered water cold in the fridge. First, boil your tea. Then take out the SCOBYs and save the top of your batch for a new starter liquid. The more you save, the faster the next brew will ferment and the safer it will be. You want the top of the batch because that's where the bacteria is most concentrated. Next, chop your fruits up and put them into bottles. Pour the kombucha into the bottles. Throw away the very bottom of your brew as the taste is poor and it is yeast rich. Wash the vessels and then rinse them with filtered water. Pour in the new sugar tea. Remember, the recipe is 4 to 8 tea portions and 1 cup of sugar per gallon of final brew. Leave room at the top to add in your SCOBY and starter. I recommend using 2 vessels so that you can experiment. Put the SCOBY on top and then pour your starter liquid gently so that will occupy the top of the jar. Put your lid back on and maybe give the vessels a final rinse. After many brews, your SCOBY will get thicker and thicker and become too large. You can do some surgery and compost the SCOBY, or you can eat it, or you can make a SCOBY hotel, which is best because now you have a spare in case something goes wrong, or you can share it with a friend. To make a SCOBY hotel, just split your SCOBY and put it in a jar with some starter and sugar tea liquid. Leave room for additional SCOBYs in the future. You don't need to tend to it much, but I would recommend adding more sugar tea every couple of months to keep everything happy. Also, make sure you have a lid on it. You probably want to have a lot of carbonation. Don't burp your fermenting bottles to test for carbonation, as this will release the gas during a time when the liquid is warm and the gas is going to escape the most. Instead, leave them to ferment for 3 to 5 days and then put them in the fridge. Then, once they're cooled off, pop one open to test the carbonation. If you want more carbonation, you can either brew with a sweeter initial stage liquid, add sugar before beginning your second fermentation, or leave them to ferment longer. You want your kombucha to have enough that it makes a nice pop, but not so much you get an Old Faithful in your kitchen. So a perfect example of that would be this. Nice strong pop, but you know, I didn't make a big mess doing that. And then of course, when you pour it, I mean, bear with me for a moment here. As you can see, you know, there's lots of bubbles. That means you made your kombucha to probably a very high level of carbonation, and that's good. Oh my God. Leave a comment if you have any questions.